Donald Trump woke up this morning and decided to target America's election system. He announced this morning on Truth Social that he will be signing an executive order that is tantamount to an overhaul of the way Americans vote. And there are a number of legal issues with it, which I'll break down in a minute. But I do want to first talk about what this executive order will say. Donald Trump says that he will be signing an order that will eliminate mail in voting across the country and will eliminate so called voting machines that he finds are rigged or not accurate. These voting machines help count ballots in states across America. And he's doing this ahead of the 2026 midterm elections, arguing that the voting machines are vulnerable to fraud. Meanwhile, there are significant legal concerns about this. This is just another attempt at the administration to completely alter the way Americans vote, America's election system. So let's break down some of the legal concerns. The first is the constitutionality of a federal executive order that targets state elections. Even federal elections are administered on a state by state level. That means California election rules are different from Idaho, are different from Ohio, are different from Florida. And that's how it's been run for centuries. Nothing has really changed other than some ways of how people vote, right? We have electronic voting machines, we have mail in ballots now that make it easier for people to make their voices heard. And by eliminating mail in ballots and by eliminating these voting machines, the Trump administration is theoretically encroaching on a state's ability to administer its own elections. And so expect a major lawsuit to be filed, likely within minutes of the signing of this executive order, and expect a federal judge to block it. Now, the ultimate goal here isn't to win in a district court. It's not to win in a circuit court. It's to go to the United States Supreme Court and win at the Supreme Court, where the conservatives have a 6-3 majority currently. So that's the first issue, is whether or not the Trump administration can even commandeer states to completely alter their election systems. On its face, the answer is likely no, but we have to see the details of the executive order. The second issue, which is a little more personal to you, is that by eliminating mail in ballots, the Trump administration is making it harder to vote for many people across the country, especially those who don't necessarily live near a voting booth, don't necessarily have the means to get to a voting booth, or maybe are disabled, for example, and can't drive to a polling location during election time. Mail in balloting really became a big thing during the COVID election season, during the 2020 election. And it was done because many people were socially distancing, and yet you want to make your voice heard, but you're scared about getting the virus. And so you stay away from the polls and you just mail your ballot in. There was a ton of litigation around whether or not mail in ballots are lawful, and the Trump administration lost every single time. Donald Trump himself claimed that the election was fraudulent in 2020 because of mail in balloting. And when they sued, they lost all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And by essentially eliminating mail in ballots, the Trump administration is making it harder for millions to vote, thereby disenfranchising them ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Now, before I continue, please consider subscribing to support my work by clicking the button below or sending a one time donation via Venmo to Aaron Parnas. Now, this shouldn't necessarily be a surprise because this is a common theme over the past several weeks to try to change the outcome of the 2026 election. You have this elimination of mail in balloting, the elimination of certain voting machines that Trump doesn't like. And then on a state by state level, you have Republicans trying to change or gerrymander the maps to make it easier for House Republicans to keep the speakership and for Senate Republicans to ultimately keep the Senate majority. So it's going to be an interesting development. There are going to be significant legal challenges. So while he's going to sign this today, it's not the end all be all. Now, meanwhile, today is a very big day for President Zelensky and European leaders and could be a turning point in the conflict in Ukraine. President Zelensky is visiting the White House today alongside European leaders from Italy, Germany, the United Kingdom, the European Union, and elsewhere with a united message and a united front. They're going to be meeting at 1:15 p.m. in the Oval Office with President Zelensky and Donald Trump, and then with European leaders later this afternoon. And since the Alaska summit last week, the United States' position on Ukraine has really shifted. After Trump's August 8th deadline for Vladimir Putin to accept a ceasefire passed without results, He instead met with Putin in Alaska to discuss a broader peace settlement. Trump later briefed Zelensky and European leaders, with Steve Witkoff being there, his envoy, saying that Putin agreed to, quote, robust security guarantees. But by Sunday, late last night, Trump pressed Zelensky to end the war in Ukraine by dropping Ukraine's bid to reclaim Crimea, which is Ukrainian territory, and dropping Ukraine's attempts to join NATO. And experts are warning that Zelensky will be facing a very difficult meeting at the White House today because Trump has made clear that he wants Ukraine to give up its territory, even territory that it is currently occupying. Trump wants Ukraine to give up all of Donbass, which is in eastern Ukraine. It's part of eastern Ukraine. Right now, Russia does not occupy all of Donbass. It occupies maybe two-thirds or so. Russia wants all of it, and Trump may try to force Ukraine to give up all of it, even though Russia hasn't been able to occupy all of it. And overnight, there were significant strikes launched by Russia on towns across Ukraine, including in Kharkiv and Odessa, that killed civilians, including children, targeting energy infrastructure. So we'll see what happens at this meeting. If it's anything like last meeting where there were fireworks in the Oval Office, expect headlines, and I will provide you updates. Meanwhile, the National Guard is ramping up its presence this morning in parts of Washington, D.C., especially at Union Station, where this morning we saw images of guardsmen outside of D.C.'s primary train facility. Additional National Guardsmen are scheduled to come to D.C. from West Virginia, Ohio, and South Carolina over the next several days. California lawmakers are returning from recess to consider holding a special election in November and approve a new congressional map. China's foreign ministry reiterated that Taiwan is an internal matter after President Trump said Xi Jinping assured him that there would be no invasion during Trump's term. Spokesperson Mao Ning stressed the peaceful reunification remains the goal, but warning Beijing will never allow any force to separate Taiwan from China. Heal Palestine, a U.S.-based aid group that brings severely injured children from Gaza for temporary medical assistance, expressed distress after the State Department halted visitor visas for Palestinians following significant pressure from far-right influencer Laura Loomer, who falsely claimed that the program was facilitating Islamic immigration, prompting the group to emphasize that all patients and families return home after care. Germany said that the United States must quickly implement agreed reductions on tariffs for European-made cars before a broader trade deal can be finalized. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis protested nationwide, with over 500,000 gathering in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square to demand an end to the war in Gaza and for an immediate release of the hostages, marking one of the largest demonstrations since the conflict began in October of 2023. And this comes amid the fact that over 61,000 Palestinians have been killed, and Egypt is currently pushing for a 60-day truce to try to stop this humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, Norway's $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund announced that it will exclude 6 companies linked to the West Bank and Gaza from its portfolio following a review of Israeli investments. MSNBC is going through a rebrand. It's now going to be My Source News Opinion World, marking a major name change for one of the largest television networks on air. That's all the news right now. Support my work by subscribing today, and I'll be back this afternoon for a recap of the Oval Office meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky, so stay tuned. Hey folks, Aaron Parnas here. Thank you so much for watching The Parnas Perspective. Please consider subscribing to support our work as we grow this independent news media entity into something that rivals mainstream every single day. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.